a very strong matchup into Cheonsu's Paladin. So even if Tom does lose this matchup, he has a great counter Q, which Cheonsu will then respond with the Warrior, potentially, and then Tom has the Demon Hunter, and that comes out pretty well for Tom.
Does appear that way, but while for Cheonsu, this is pre-mulligan at least, a pretty bad hand. Pre-mulligan for Tom, this is a premium hand. Sethic, Apotheosis. I was talking about winning the early game. This does that.
Probably keeping both Sethic is a bit redundant, although while you say that the curve is double Sethic into Apotheosis, then that's a way to go for it. I definitely like one Sethic kept Apotheosis you can think about, but then you kind of don't know where the coin is going to figure out in that turn.
I mean, this is just straight up a Miracle Priest hand for Tom. He can either go Sethic or hold back, depending on what the board state is from Cheonsu. Maybe even just Wand Maker first. But then Palm Reading's a huge Sethic pop-off turn. This mid-game is looking very, very strong for Tom.
Right. In terms of secrets, for Cheonsu, he is running 2 Oh My Yogg, 2 Galloping Savior, and 1 Reckoning. So Tom going to go ahead and test for Oh My Yogg with the coin. He gets...
the sacrifice a minion one, yeah, it just does nothing. Yeah. That's fine.
What it did for Cheonsu is buy him the turn to get the first minion on board, which is very big into Hand of Adal. So while that Oh My Yogg felt like it was low impact to just get rid of the coin, it's actually really huge here.
I would literally delete my entire deck, I think, just to have a Nazmani in hand right now. Like, if Tom had that, he would literally just win the game on the spot. It's obviously still very, very powerful, but the extra mana reduction would just be lights out here.
Wow. Ooh. The Nova feels slow, even though it's a little bit like well aligned against Cheonsu's current board. I just want to get more stuff for the Sethic, so I'm looking at Apotheosis.
Yeah, same. And then you're just big chilling. Whilst Cheonsu does some palm readings of his own, I guess. Very, very close in.
Divine Shield or Stealth?
Divine Shield and Copy, if he picked that, sounds pretty good to me. To curve into Hammer as well.
Oh, yeah.
Huge.
Okay, this is it for Tom, though. 3 renews potentially and a Holy Smite.
It's insane amounts of tempo. Just looking for any good cards to keep the value rolling. Power Word Feast is definitely not bad.
Another
wow!
Smite. That's so broken! What? He's just deleting Cheonsu's board for free.
So sick. I mean, I guess you just go double Holy Smite, and then when it sticks, very likely, next turn you go Feast plus Apotheosis. It's disgusting.
It's so strong. And he also just picks up Raise Dead in case it doesn't stick. There are some Golem outcomes where the Sethic doesn't live, so it's still fine.
Oh man, he's just getting premium spells as well. Raise Dead, Insight, even the Initiation is pretty sick as well.
The Divine Shield copy is pretty problematic, though. So to that, does Tom just say, I build a big minion, you can't deal with it. Back to you, Cheonsu.
Yeah, the Hysteria is really annoying, though, because it's essentially a 50-50 on just the first hit. If you hit the Divine Shield, then it's a guaranteed clear. If you hit the Sethic first, then it's a guaranteed 5/5 stuck in play.
He starts
from you. Tough.
Yeah, he can still go Shield and Apo at the end of it. Condemn can remove the shield so that next turn he can go Hysteria. Wow.
I like that. I think Soul Mirror makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of boards that become quite difficult to clear, and Soul Mirror answers almost all of them.
I'm concerned with this board, though.
Yeah, sure.
The Plague can ping off the shields a lot and set up for Hysteria the next turn, but it looks like Tom is just unbothered and gonna overdraw.
He is gonna overdraw, and it's gonna be cleaned up very easily with Hammer of the Naru next turn. Like, this just makes Cheonsu's game plan so easy, so clean here.
But the Hysteria is really strong now for Tom.
Yes. If you go Holy Smite on the Divine Shield, then you're guaranteed a clear.
And he can end with Ooze. It's so good.
Yeah, that's just bananas. And now things slow down for Cheonsu. This is the dead zone between your Hammer of the Naru on 6 and your 3 9-drops that he has available. And so he's going to have to piece together something fairly ragtag, especially as he's drawn a bunch of secrets here, and the sword is just garbage.
There's still 2 secrets in the deck, Galloping and Reckoning, so at least he's still thinning the deck towards something, but
sure,
it's just so low impact for this point in the game. Okay, Tom gonna be aware of the possibility of second Oh My Yogg. So starting Raised Dead feels decent.
Yeah, I'm looking at Raised Dead. I'm kind of looking at the... I don't know. I was looking at Initiation, obviously, on the Dragon Scale... the Red Scale Dragon Tamer, just because you have dragons in your own deck, right? Like, that'll draw you Ysera, which is pretty good. But this does seem better.
Tom was saying even if the Studies gets Oh My Yogg, he's okay.
Yep, clever value trade here as well, just to clear off the Reckoning. Malagos? That's pretty good.
No shortage of value whatsoever.
Just about surviving here for Tom. And at this point, with this kind of a hand, honestly, the best way to survive isn't to try and accrue a removal. I think it's just to get ahead. You want to be dictating the trades from here on in. He obviously knows now that this is another Reckoning. He knows it's the full suite. So you very possibly just end up on something like Draconic Studies and then Initiation and leave it at that.
Sure. It's just between whether he values the Studies more than Raised Dead. And honestly, because what you were saying was he kind of wants ways to close out the game, I was valuing the Studies higher than the Raised Dead.
Claw Machine's actually kind of sick here, though, because it trades into the Dragon Scale, the Red Scale Dragon Tamer, procs the Reckoning, and then just draws you a card, and then you can attack with your Skeletal Dragon as well.
That's right. He could also just send it into the horse because he plays Ooze that will trigger the Galloping Savior. I just find it so funny that we're talking about Tom just needs to survive when he's the one that's kind of killing Cheonsu here.
Yeah, true. I mean, yes, again, he is winning this game by a significant margin. Now, make no mistake, as he gets a 4-mana 7/7 that even clears the board and doesn't overload you. Eat your heart out. 2015 Hearthstone, 2016, whenever that came out.
And the Dream is not even playable for Cheonsu here because it was potentially just Assassinate for 1 mana because Tom is going to overdraw.
Yeah.
So I guess there's no reason to trade right now. He could just Nightmare.
Yeah, Nightmare gives a full clear.
But
I guess holding
prefer
on,
maybe trying to get more value off of the Awakenings.
Yeah, he can get... Oh, he's not even running Samurai because he's got Kazakus in there. Yikes. Either way, Tom just letting it rip with the Elucia right now. He can, of course, go for the classic play of bouncing Ysera back into his own hand, which is kind of fun. Does mean that he is going to overdraw a card, quote-unquote, but I guess it also means that Cheonsu doesn't have any randomness from his deck to try and fight back with.
Yeah, it's fun. It's actively good, right? Because Tom, his only fear from his own hand right now, other than the Soul Mirror, is like a healing, which he didn't currently have to go with the Zyrella. So now he deletes that draw to possibly go with the Zyrella. And the Soul Mirror isn't that good.
Just gives Ysera right back, though, to his opponent's hand with the Skeletal Dragon, which is factually hilarious.
It is. It does have to be the mirror, you'd have to assume. And he can go One Maker and play the 1-cost spell after trading everything into the Skeletal Drake, so you probably just start One Maker.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? If Wand Maker could give Flash Heal, then maybe you could get there with Zyrella, but the fact that it gives Paladin spells means you can't even do that. And Tom, regardless of all of that nonsense I'm talking about, was just so far in the lead, takes it away, and is 1-0 up. A huge win in this series, because once again, I do want to stress, Cheonsu left the Priest up, not because he wanted to, but because he felt he had to. Arguably an oversight of his lineup is the dual vulnerability to both Paladin and Priest.
Indeed. And I honestly think that if Cheonsu doesn't get the win with the mage, he's just kind of hopeless in the series. Again, Control Warrior versus Priest, while the Priest does have to generate something extra to deal with Rattlegore, they can do that pretty consistently as long as the Rattlegore doesn't come down super early. Although Cheonsu is technically able to do that with the Vol'jin package that we were seeing from the Japanese practice group last week. I still think the counter into Priest should definitely be Mage though.
Agreed. It's a terrible matchup, the Warrior into Priest. Make no mistake, like even if we see the win every so often, it's just not good. Because if you play Rattlegore, they have so many ways to silence it, copy it. Maybe you don't even find the Rattlegore. They have way more value than you in the list. The Mage, undeniably, completely agree, is the way to go. Standard stuff, for the most part. One shooting star slotted in for one ring toss taken out from the standard list. Because, I mean, honestly, it feels to me like Deck of Lunacy is just kind of standard in the list we're seeing, at least in APAC at the moment.
Yeah, I think even across all the regions, everybody is just running Lunacy now. I don't know if that was affected somewhat by the Spring Water nerf, because now it's kind of like, oh, I should play Lunacy because I can't play the Spring Water this turn anyway, and then follow it up with the Spring Water. But I don't necessarily feel that it's necessary against Priest. If you do get a good opening hand with Encanter's Flow and start with Lunacy, you can start to question, should I go Lunacy and then Flow to get all the Grand Slams? But if you have Flow in the opener without Lunacy, you definitely start with that. And then the Lunacy becomes pretty bad, because then all those 7-cost spells become Libram of Hope, which is not very good against Priest.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you get yourself triple survival of the fittest in the worst case scenario, it's still pretty good. There's many ways to generate a board, especially on the 5 and 7 mana cost spell slot. But here we can see a pretty brutal statistic for Cheonsu this season. 4 and 9 on the Mage, so I don't put a lot of stock in his chances of taking this, even if I would still argue that it's a favorable matchup for the Mage.
Oh, well, I don't want to give him that hard of a time. It's not the biggest sample size. Like, if you take a window snapshot of my ladder series, I played a lot to get my high rank at the beginning of the month. There was definitely probably some window where I went sub 50%. This one is just sub 40%. It's not that different.
Right, it's like how you can get any combination of numbers if you go far enough along in Pi. Right. You can find any combination of win rates if you look over all my rogue games over the past few weeks, or Gia's mage games. So you just gotta know how to look for the statistics that make you look most favorable. But either way, I think Tom was just looking very strong, sorry to cut you off, on the Priest, and shouldn't be slowing down here, as he will know that you are just looking for not too much of a defensive line. You just want to get nice and aggressive onto the board and start pressuring the Mage right from the get-go.
And for Cheonsu, I was initially expecting this to be a full toss. I do keep studies in certain matchups, but without Cram Session to follow up against Priest in particular, I feel that it's a little bit lacking. I value studies a bit more to give you board presence in the early game, which doesn't do all that much against Priest, maybe more valid against Token Druid or Aggro Paladin.
Yeah, you have a very reasonable chance of finding Thalnos, which I guess just cycles, if nothing else. But I mean, even here, the Ruined Orb not being played, kind of wanted to see that just for the slim chance of getting Incantus Flow for next turn.
Yeah. As it turns out, Derek, the chances for hitting any specific spell damage minion as Mage on studies is the same as the odds for hitting Alexstrasza for 9 mana on Druid.
Interesting.
Which is 33%.
What do you know?
Okay, not the highest value Font of Power, but it allows him to at least get some early minion development, and if he ever top decks some card draw, he will have the hand space to deal with it.
I'm really tempted to take Gift. I know you don't have Sethic yet, but it gets so good if you draw it. It's probably Holy Nova in the end, but I don't know, I'm tempted by the Gift.
I don't hate it either, because Tom has removal for days. Look at his hand.
Right,
it's double Holy Smite Hysteria. The wave also feels redundant with this, so even if it's Gift on an Ooze for board presence, I think that's better. Disagrees though.
Yeah, just trying to get a lock on the board. I guess he's saying he has decent... I mean, you know, we can say he has a bunch of removal. He also has a pretty high minion count already, right? With Raise Dead, Ooze, plus these guys in play. He just kind of needs removal to supplement that. And if you're going for a minion game plan, then Hysteria becomes a lot less viable, right? Because you don't want to use it while you're ahead on board. So I don't hate it.
Galarian played for Cheonsu is a big deal. He didn't get any cheaper spell damage options that I saw. And so... as soon as Tom kills this, that means that Texas Blast, Refreshing Spring Water, and like Font of Power all not at their ideal state.
Okay. But he did get the Encounters flow. This is what you are looking for, of course. And even though, as you correctly put, his no minion spells like Font and Apexis get worse, he doesn't need to be worrying about that too much, because with a second Encounters flow, the burn plan is looking pretty real now. Just needs card draw to supplement it.
Yeah, that's huge. Still the other Fireball and the other Mask in the deck, so there's some really good discounts to be had. But meanwhile, Tom is putting forth a decent amount of pressure himself, thinking about whether he wants to immediately activate the Spell Burst on his Crimson Hothead. I think that's probably worth it, because he kind of wants to go 4+2 next turn.
I think I actually like saving it. It's not even like you're afraid of a rush minion from a Apexis Blast, because it's very likely inactive. And so because you're very likely to play Insight next turn and you could draw Sethic, I think I like the flexibility, given that there's very little difference that +1 attack and Taunt makes on this turn.
Sure.
But obviously it's close.
Definitely still activate the Crimson Hothead with a different spell. It's just that the healing slotted in that one turn sometimes makes a difference.
True.
It's probably too early to make the difference right now. Flash Heal, again, a good late game card in this matchup, but I'm looking at the gift again.
Same.
Just to
I kind of like the gift. Like, you just give Divine Shield to one of your minions. If you're expecting Flame Strike on this turn, you could even just put it on one of the Scorpids, right? In order to make your board much, much more likely to survive.
Right.
But again, for Tom, it's huge amounts of healing being taken, which, I mean, I guess when you've seen Solarian shuffled in, you're less afraid of, like, minions. It's just the burn plan, because Apexis Blast won't summon anything, most likely. So picking all the heal in the world does make some amount of sense.
Fair enough. And Studies picked up now allows him to very likely get a huge Dragon online next turn as well. The Apexis, again, not too great here. So Cheonsu's gonna start Missiles.
Yep, that's fine. The Scorpion's left alive is not great, but it's not terrible.
So obviously, if he starts Spring Water, he kind of wastes a mana in a lot of situations. So if he starts Fallen Hero, I mean, he can do this, right? Because you don't necessarily want to start Fallen Hero, because sometimes you want to have the full 7 instead of 6, and sometimes you hit Solarian Prime. I was just trying to consider breakpoints.
No, that's true, I guess. And saving the Rune Orb to go with an extra spell damage minion does make sense. Lab Partner being picked up, I was tempted by, just because you can go Apexis, Fireball, Rune Orb all on the same turn. But he just takes the extra value here, and finding an AI for his efforts, you're not going to turn your nose up at that.
Yep. Deep Freeze? Oh wait, the Grand Finale is active next turn, because Steward's an Elemental. Yes, you take that. That's
pretty good. Yeah, full clear, 2 8/8s next turn. Very nice spot while the rope was burning from Cheonsu.
Yeah. Oh, not the dragons he wanted to see. None of them a good play for right now.
Honestly, I kind of like the look of Deathwing. I know that Runway Blackwing can get multiple instances of value, and I guess if you're clearing the board, you're not likely to see a whole lot. But against exactly Grand Finale, obviously he wasn't expecting this. It's a big difference in terms of what you could play.
I mean, just the fact that the Runwing can come down earlier is huge, but this turn is very likely going to be Shadow Word Horror instead. Sorry, Ruin.
True.
Protege? Oh, okay. Malagos allows him to draw towards more healing, which is always relevant in this matchup.
Was that really a flash heal there?
I don't think so. I thought that was a hero-powered turn, but I guess he's just trying to clear hand space for Malagos next turn.
Either way, That is Solarian Prime off the top. Weird turn, all things considered. But for Cheonsu, here's Apexis Blasts become active. Wildfire is big. Destroy your own Solarian is bad, but Fireball to round things out. Easy come, easy go.
That is the most average Prime I've ever seen. It often feels like they're completely terrible 10% of the time and 90% of the time extremely broken. But I guess that's what happens when you play it on an empty board, huh?
Yeah. It can just go a bit wrong.
So Tom prioritizing Malagos there is why he went for Flash Heal. I expect that he is just trying to dump even more cards right now so he doesn't overdraw. The wave? Yeah.
Yeah, that's not doing much here, especially with so much removal left in hand. Man, this is going to be such a close one. Obviously, this Malagos kind of demands being cleared, but with triple Brain Freeze, it's not actually that difficult to clear it off.
Yeah. I mean, it might just be frozen for now, and then Cheonsu can decide later if he wants to clear it. I think he's gearing up for a bigger Flame Strike to sweep this up in the aftermath. And then after the Flame Strike comes down, try to get the good mass going. It is looking still pretty good for Cheonsu.
Don't want to stop.
Oh, he's going to Hysteria.
Readings? Okay.
And then Hero Power. I think there was an opportunity to go Palm Reading there, right? Because he would have had mana remaining to Hero Power with the 2 mana he discounted.
Yeah, I think just a little fast there in terms of planning out his mana.
And I think it's still right to Hero Power over the to Palm Reading at the end here over Hero Power, even though you concede you've lost a little bit of healing. It's more important to make sure he has as much flexibility for the next couple turns as possible. Yeah,
being able to go Dragon plus Shadow or Death is pretty big. I mean, I guess if you have your Sarah, you can go for Dream anyway. But Desperate Prayer being found, not bad whatsoever.
Okay, Font for Cheonsu. He really wanted card draw, but this, you'll take it.
Ooh.
Oh,
that's pretty good.
Firebrand with Brain Freeze is a clear.
Yep. And then you can fit in the 2 damage at the end.
You fight me, you get burned.
Yeah, if he plays the free Brain Freeze, he can also fit in Ping and a 5-cost minion. It's really good. Another Brain Freeze. Gift is tempting with Raz, potentially?
That's true. That is true. You get 2 of them as well. I mean, maybe if one sticks around, you can copy again.
I think trying to get more than 1 good gift as mage is a bit ambitious, so I don't mind the Brain Freeze as well. It's just really cheap single target removal or not, if not delay. Okay, so Condemn Holy Nova is a clear, but he doesn't do very much with the rest of his turn. I'd assume it just starts with Renew and try to either fish for better answers or see if he can fit in a Dragon.
Oh man, he's healed for such an absurd amount this game, and like taking a look at what's actually left for Cheonsu here, like there's still a fair amount of burn with Fireball, Apexis, and Cthulhu. I mean, I guess given that most of that's still in hand, like, I'm honestly not sure how he's got all this damage he's already done this game that Tom has had to heal for, because it all feels like it's still left in the deck. Even with all this healing, I still think Tom's got an uphill climb.
Right. I think it's smart for him to go for a Dragon here, though. Just missing an entire turn to clear the board and having these clunky cards in hand can spell disaster in the matchup. But now for Cheonsu, Raz into Ring Toss Corrupted, into Brain Freeze, so he doesn't have to care about this Ysera. Like, Brain Freeze is just kind of like scuffed Evolving Missiles. It's 1 mana, go away for a turn.
An
Big
interesting
fair
way of
game
looking
you'd
at
have
it.
to think about.
Yeah, I'm looking very heavily at that.
Like,
Freeze
yes, it can be Elucia, but like Tom has a ton of cards as well. So Cheonsu will be able to dump quite a few if there's Elucia, if not, just not fully get the value from Rigged Fair Game going to Tom's hand.
Yeah, exactly. Tom would literally just overdraw if he goes for the Elucia here into the Rigged Fair Game. And as we can see, it's not even here. So Runway Blackwing, honestly, you can get it to be a 100% if you play the Dream, but it's not that good.
Starting with Raised Dead, I think he wanted that to be Counterspell, but it's not. So Just took 3 more damage.
And obviously now, playing out the Blackwing becomes really scary because you're afraid of Mirror Entity, which would be backbreaking.
He knows it's not Netherwind now as well, so this could be instead just Awakens Holy Nova, and then you kind of say, okay, there's a rigged fair game, can't do much about it. Okay.
So expensive in terms of the removal you're having to use.
Fair.
There it is. You have to end with your Sarah Awakens now just to stop the damage? Like 6 here is a big deal.
I think the Holy Nova's fine. Still comes out ahead on board, but yeah, even just the 3 damage sticking to the board can be huge here. Flame Strike for Cheonsu is big as well. Oh my goodness, there is so much he can do this turn. It's like Flame
good
Strike
positioning.
into Spring Water, and then you decide from there.
Yeah.
But very likely the Brain Freezes get onto the Ysera, and a Mask goes face for the full damage.
Yeah, it's just absurd. Even the Runed Orb as well. So much damage.
So this is one of those spots where Cheonsu has to think about Elucia again, because in theory, while you want to go for a Mask while there's an empty board, sometimes it's better to just dump the cheapest spells from your hand so that Tom, conversely, cannot dump them if he takes your hand.
I mean, but by that metric, Brain Freeze, Shooting Star, plus the Mask of Cthulhu as well. Like, you clear off all but 1 of the health on board, get a bunch of damage.
Yeah, I like that. I was thinking it was Ring Toss if he was going to go for this Mask game plan, because it would get corrupted still, but sure, just counterspell, 1 mana cheaper to work with. Oh, yep. Cheonsu, with this play, not going for Apexis Blast, is playing around Samuro harder than he's playing around Elucia, and even if it is Elucia, Tom isn't able to dump both Mask and Apexis Blast, so I think Cheonsu covered all his bases really nicely here. And now Tom is searching for a miracle.
Yeah, maybe with a rush there on Samuro, he could have gotten enough to heal. But as it currently stands, this is not it. He knew almost for a fact that just playing Runway Blackwing plus the Renew would not be good enough, so he has to find something more impressive than that. Has not done it, unfortunately, for him, and so even with whatever you want to do, his Psych Split, heal, it's just going to be enough for the Fireball and the Apexis to close things out. And Cheonsu getting the kill here, again, cannot be overstated how big of a deal this was. With just the Control Warrior left, if he lost, it was looking so bad.
Indeed. The Mage got the job done, even though the Mage matchup spread is not heavily skewed in any direction, I would say. Maybe it's best as a counter queue against Warlock specifically. A lot of people still just bring it because it's a comfort pick, and it does have its teeth in a lot of matchups still. I will say, though, that it is not necessarily looking so good against the rest of Tom's lineup, which does feature Token Druid.
Right, and you'd have to imagine that that is going to be the counter queue into the Mage, as I think I can see with confirmation that it is going to be. What would it be? The Demon Hunter is the other deck left for Tom. It definitely feels like it has less of an edge in the matchup. But, I mean, as you were saying, the Druid already just got itself, in my opinion, 2 very nice-looking matchups. The most recent build of Paladin in N'Zoth Paladin, I think what it's made up for with a stronger mid-game and very strong late-game powerful play in N'Zoth, it's lost a lot of that early game. When you compare it to Libram Paladin, that of course runs Aldor Attendant, plus the Hand of Adal, the Libram of Wisdoms, its early-game development is a lot more consistent, whereas now the actual 1-drops that you can play on 1 as Paladin, it's like, you know, only the Knight of Anointment and very often the Safety Inspector, which sucks as discarding some of your best cards a lot of the time in the early game. So that one could be a bit rough. Obviously, first of all, though, it is the Mage against the Druid.
Sorry, you lost me a little bit there. Cheonsu can't play his Paladin anymore, right?
Oh, was the one that lost? Oh my god, I apologize. I'm still in Conquest mode.
That's alright. Going between Conquest and LHS is kind of like trying to figure out Elucia and rigged fair game interactions depending on who plays it and on what. It all just gets a little bit wonky.
Yeah, it's also my job. You don't want to dig me out of that one. That is just me being an idiot there. But for the Token Druid for Tom against the Mage and the Warrior, the Control Warrior that will be left over for Cheonsu, that feels like a much better counter queue in terms of the decks that he has remaining. So for Tom, if he does take the win, it could still be a real back and forth, getting my head screwed on straight. So definitely, I think, looking like we might be going all the distance to Game 5 as this currently stands.
Right, and if we are just looking at matchup spreads and also our experience based on testing, we could assume this Token Druid takes a win. Cheonsu then counter queues with the Control Warrior, which is his only deck left and a good matchup, to be fair. That will likely beat the Token Druid. And then we end up on Demon Hunter versus Warrior for Game 5, which, while Tom does have the Ooze in there, which gives him a strong way to beat Bulwark of Azzanoth, in our testing, we did actually manage to see you on the Warrior absolutely beat up on Demon Hunter. There are just hands that self-defeat the deck sometimes, and then there's also these very high-pressure starts from the Warrior that can make it a bit tough. But first, of course, we have to focus on this matchup that already feels so 2 weeks ago, Mage versus Token Druid. Again, for Cheonsu, the one shooting star in there is definitely a welcome inclusion.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into Warrior Demon Hunter later, but like straight up, I'm like 60% in that matchup as the Warrior against the Demon Hunter in testing. I appreciate that it's not a good matchup, but it just feels so favorable when you're as good as I am at drawing the one good card in your deck in Shadowhunter Vol'jin. But for Cheonsu, obviously a premium hand within Kansas Flow alone, but are we keeping the Combustion, Gia? Because I know that without the Flow, you do like getting rid of that very aggressively, but with the Flow, did you like holding on to it for a bit of removal?
Right. I also don't like when I mean like encounters flow. Sorry, combustion is good with flow. I mean it's good when it's discounted by flow, so you can do other stuff on the same turn, playing the combustion and hopefully like a cheap minion from Font of Power to come back on board. Or you can fit in other removal spells, so you can completely clear the Glowfly board. So I think everybody is in agreement now that combustion, just solo kept, is not quite good enough in this matchup. Tom, however, kept Nature Studies and guessed the weight.
Yeah, I mean, already so many decisions to talk about here for Tom, because he could have gone Thorn Growth plus Adorable Infestation on this turn, which would have been more mana efficient, and very importantly, set up for Coin Innovate Arbor up on the next turn if there wasn't like exactly Devolving Missiles or Combustion to clear it.
Right. And even the studies on 1 is not an automatic play, because you kind of just want to guess the weight on 2 and then sometimes you bank the mana turn 3. But with the Coin and Innervate, I think it is fine. He's still able to get down a Glowfly nice and early. And Cheonsu, okay, second flow. He just needs some card draw now. Okay, now you take Combustion.
Ooh. Yeah. Definitely not turning your nose up at that. And Tom, even taking Wild Growth, I kind of find surprising. I was very much looking at another Innovate. Even if you just have to accept that you're losing the mana discount and go Coin, Innovate, Glowfly, I don't know. It's pretty slow by comparison.
This has just been such a weird early game panel.
Oh my god.
Tom, in terms of the amount of mana he has kind of wasted but then gained back by playing Wild Growth, it just felt like there was maybe a more efficient way to go about all of that and potentially get the Glowfly down even one turn sooner. But this draw for Cheonsu... Wait.
Oh, you can't go for it yet, right?
He can't. It's a full clear.
Maybe next turn.
Is it even good? This is double flow played. So like, it's nothing that turns into the 7-cost slot, right? Because there are no 6-cost original cards in the deck, and you really want those 7-cost spells from the Lunacy to actually be good in the matchup.
But on the other side, there is one play, and one play only as I see it. You use all your Innovates. You go Thorn Growth, Coin, Vate, Solar Arbor, but Tom disagrees? Okay.
Okay, just building a stronger board to play around a Flame Strike that was drawn post Encounter's Flow.
You know what? I like this. I take it back. You only have one play. It sets up for a very, very likely huge Arbor up with Solar next turn.
I will say, though, that it's a bit scarier to Devolving Missiles. But then you just gotta choose which one you're gonna play around. And even if Devolving comes down there, it's not a disaster, right? You can still follow up with the Arbor up. So Tom's play definitely still fine.
And for Cheonsu here, after fireballing not the 2/2 Treant, I wonder what card he has in hand. Either way, though, I think you just have to go all in here. Even if it is Flame Strike, you're still kind of just winning, right? 2/2 Treants alone and kind of get there. But Ruined Orb is a big, big pickup. This is still not over.
That removes a lot of Tom's top deck potential for immediate lethal now. Barrier doesn't do...
It's okay. It means they can't get there with hero powers.
Right, but the minion from the Netherwind might even be more pressing. I don't know. Cheonsu just has to live in a world where he gets card draw, so fair enough. Ice Barrier tides him over into the stronger turns from card draw. But it all doesn't make a difference if he doesn't hit the card draw because Tom is refilling like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, Thorn Growth, adorable. Probably even Bloom into Power of the Wild as well, just to get as much pressure on board as possible.
Alternatively, Thorn Growth into Bloom Vade Soul for this turn, but then that's only 3 minions, so even weaker to Devolving Missiles. I don't hate your line. Okay, or just front load the damage on one tree. Yeah, I don't hate this either.
Coin Power of the Wild, Bloom Hero Power, just to try and set up 2-turn lethal no matter what. Maybe not.
Okay, he is going for Soul in the end. So a blend between our plays that front loads more damage. Nothing has changed though. Cheonsu needed card draw to stay in it, and he still needs it now. Is that a Spring Water I see off the top? It is.
Do you deck of Lunacy first ever here? Like, I wonder what you're even looking for that can pull you back. I guess just another Spring Water.
There's like a Pexus Blast, Ring Toss.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, the Lunacy is actively bad post double flow, I'm pretty sure. Oh no!
Ooh, I mean, he hit the good one, but he hit the good one too much.
Right, I mean, Cheonsu obviously wanted to just full clear the board with Mask there. Now the Mask puts more power on board, and so it's a Thalnos deviation, but he has this barrier to stay alive. Oh,
yeah,
this draw's
you can
big
test
though.
with... Yeah, big draw. Test the Counterspell, you start to realize, okay, it's not Mirror NC, Netherwind, or Counterspell. Very possibly going to be the... the Ice Barrier, which is the one thing, of course, that keeps Cheonsu alive. One final turn for a miracle draw. He's got 2 of them with the Thalnos in play, but it's going to have to be something big.
Shooting Star, Combustion, Brain... Okay, Brain... Okay...
I think that might just be it, right?
I think the Mask on
Not necessarily.
Average, yeah. I was thinking Mini Mage because he has the mana to play it anyway, but Cheonsu is probably right in saying I need Prime off the top after this turn if he even survives it. Finds the Mask. Okay, alive?
He's alive. Arbor up for insta-game.
About the average outcome. Pride's Fury is 1 off lethal right now with the hero power. So Cheonsu needs card draw into Ring Toss for Barrier just to stay alive on top of clearing this board.
Yeah, or of course, sacrifice off the Prime and draw card draw, and then draw your Solarian Prime. Okay.
Oh my gosh, why is this game still a thing?
Haunt?
Evolving. Haunt has to be it, but that is not it. Tom gets over the line. That was so close there. Of course, this is the expected outcome in terms of matchup favorability, but man, did Cheonsu get close.
Yeah, I'm going to roleplay as a Battlegrounds player here now, Gia, see if I do a good job. Oh, I was 1 turn away from stabilizing. Oh, come on. I could definitely have won that game as Cheonsu. Right, exactly. Yeah. I just I played both my counterflows. I was going to win that game. But still, a good job indeed from Tom. I think while I would have played that a little bit differently in the early game, he definitely found some spots that I think were, noticeably better than the lines I would have taken. Holding back on the Arbor Up to make sure that your board is more survivable, and then basically using the Arbor Up as just damage buff rather than immediate board presence, I think was very, very smart. And was possibly the token to his victory.
Indeed. Early game, again, still have some questions because I think the Glowfly could have come down a turn sooner if Tom had done it differently, but mastery of late game board building to play around what Mage has to offer makes all the difference there. And it goes to show, even if Mage hits the double flow, they need a lot of card draw to actually get all the value off of it. But for Cheonsu, not the worst thing in the world, as he still has a very strong counter queue. This matchup is pretty miserable for the Druid, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, it's one of the few matchups as Token Druid where it's about exactly what you would expect. Because very often against like Control Warlock, it's actually a pretty good matchup for the Token Druid. Priest, it can be kind of close if a bit unfavorable. But against the Warrior, it is just so difficult to stick a board. They have so much redundancy in their removal. All of their removal feels good in the matchup as well. Like if you go small with a big Arbor Up turn or going for... sorry, a couple of minions plus Pride's Fury, Coerce and Shield Slam become insane. Obviously, Bladestorm, Rancor, and Barov are insane at all points in the matchup. But yeah, just very, very difficult for the Druid to win because the Warrior, if anything, gets on board quicker than the Druid a lot of the time.
Yeah, just the Scorpions to start off are pretty problematic if the Druid doesn't have Lunar Eclipse. And also just Vol'jin, whether it's used aggressively to try and cheat out Troublemaker or Rattlegore, which if one of those comes down early, the Druid can pretty much pack up. You can a lot of the times just play it against the Druid, and at worst it pulls out a Gibberling, and then if you can kill it on the spot, great, that's one less board you've given the Druid. And if it pulls out nothing, great, you've gotten the 5-mana 3/6 with some removal upside. For the Warrior, the only real problematic board state from Druid is when they're able to get Soul of the Forest, and so the Warrior needs to have a combination of two of their removal spells in one turn. It's usually Brawl plus Bladestorm or Bladestorm Rancor, something like that. If it's not that, though, it's so hard for the Warrior to not clear the board.
Well, an interesting enough mulligan to start things off for Tom. Obviously the Fungal is an insta-keep, but the Thorn Growth is a little underwhelming, I would say, to get things rolling. I would probably have just harder mulligan for a Innovate into Glowfly to try and get it down as soon as possible, but what do I know?
Yeah, I mean, the Thorn Growth keep I would see as more relevant in different matchups, but Cheonsu's not going to be bothered about these 1/2s, and they're going to push very little damage. It's not the same as versus Mage, where all these little breakpoints can come down to you being able to threaten lethal with hero power. Warrior can gain armor very reliably.
And one of the real unsung heroes in the matchup is Outrider's Axe, one of the cards that we've kind of forgotten, I think, how good everyone thought it would be. Like, it was a 4 out of 4 or 5 out of 5 in a lot of people's reviews of the Baron's expansion. And while it hasn't proved to be quite so devastating, like, it's still just an objectively insanely strong card for what it does, especially when you give it +1 durability.
Indeed. And that's another reason against playing Thorn Growth early if you want to be super
right, yeah.
it. But for Tom, there is a crossroads decision here because he could just, for example, play the first Glowfly and say, if you don't have one of those cards that can clear it, one of the many, many cards that can clear it, then I win. This turn, he's playing around the breakpoint where Brawl becomes available, so it then has to be Rancor or Bladestorm. Still pretty likely that Cheonsu has at least one of those, though, so I'm more in favor of Fungal, even if he ends up potentially overdrawing at the end, because he really wants to hit Lightning Bloom in order to go for Glowfly plus Soul of the Forest in one turn.
Would you ever consider Innovate Arbor Up? Like, I know that you have the Solar Eclipse that you want to make it go with it, but I think, like Glowfly here, you really want to save it. Tom going with a kind of hybrid line along the idea of what I was saying, where you play one of your buff cards immediately. But the benefit of his line, of course, is that it means that Axe can't kill off the Thorn Growth Sentry, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, looking at this again, it's not as weird as I thought it looked initially. Cheonsu getting a pretty good outcome from his minefield, though.
Yeah, for real.
actually clearing a minion. I think it's not necessarily the outcome he wanted, which is just get the taunt down to a health total where the Axe Swing can deal with it, but he's still able to deal with it with Shield Slam here, and that's a win for Cheonsu. Tom's play does clear up hand space, so he can go for the fungal now, but again, it's still a ways off from being able to play Soul of the Forest on a significant board because he has used that Innervate.
Yeah, and this is really what he's been setting up for, or what I was going to guess he's setting up for, is drawing cards into going for the play of Glowfly plus the Soul all in one turn. But he just lets rip with it right now, saying, okay, you know what, if you have the answer, you have the answer, but he still has card draw to follow up. But it is more aggressive than I was anticipating.
Yeah. Cheonsu can be very happy to brawl this away as he has the second brawl. Bladestorm, I think, a bit more valuable because it's cheaper, and also the brawl most of the time allows him further card draw and better mana expenditure.
Okay, probably you'd have to imagine looking at another draw turn. Like, you can use these Arbor Ups as mediocre plays, but even if you just go Marsul Arbor Up, like one of them gets cleared by the Axe, it takes so little to clear up the rest. So setting up something more impressive, again, I think is the way to go. And Gibbling, Bloom, Soul of the Forest, he's getting somewhere with this hand.
Yes, he is, indeed. Tom's earlier play did free up the hand space so that he could draw towards something like this as well. It's a question if he wants to play out the Marsul just to get it out of hand at some point, but I'd rather not give Cheonsu the draw here.
Yeah, agreed. And now, of course, the other facet of Control Warrior gameplay that we don't really talk about is that when there's nothing on the board, you're very happy to just develop your own minions into what they have. I was kind of looking at Shield Maiden, honestly, just because it's a little bit harder to clear. But I guess, I mean, he got to play the stage dive anyway. Yeah, I think just getting a 5/5 in play that doesn't die to Luna felt a bit better.
Yeah, I agree. In any case, Gibberling into Lunar Eclipse. Sure, there's many orders by which you can go about this. As long as Tom plays the Soul of the Forest at the end of this turn, it is fine with me.
Just trying to think if there's any reason to leave up the Scorpid, because you can make it so that Bladestorm is a little bit harder to clear, but I think it can just sacrifice away very easily or get down to 1 health, so it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of how he fits the mana in efficiently, it's like Bloom? Oh, I guess he doesn't need to Bloom here, sure. I was thinking he might Power of the Wild at the end, too.
Yeah, he could have got away to get a full board. Soul of the Forest did, but it would have meant that he couldn't go Solar plus Arbor next turn because he would have had to use the Lightning Bloom. And so I think this is a good middle ground.
Yeah. As long as he saves himself the maximum amount of burst for next turn, that is exactly what he wanted to achieve. He also had like a good mix of minions on different health totals in order to play around Bladestorm a bit better. But Cheonsu has a good spot to use Minefield because Tom didn't go super wide on the board and didn't buff that first layer of minions. So essentially Cheonsu is able to use the Minefield as an additional AoE when it's not always that good in this matchup.
Yeah, just another board clear, another card drawn, everything going Cheonsu's way. It's the way the matchup plays so often. Something has to go really disastrously wrong for the Druid to have any chance whatsoever.
Tom going all in now. He's seen Brawl, he's seen Minefield, but Cheonsu, of course, you said it at the beginning, so much redundancy in the deck list in terms of removal. If he just wants to go double Bladestorm, that works too.
Yeah, double Bladestorm, Brawl, Coerce. Pick your poison. There's so many different ways to go about this.
I like Bladestorm Rancor. I guess Brawl is a little bit harder to use in theory in the long run because it's not as good against Soul of the Forest, and you know, against just Glowfly, for example, it leaves 1 minion on board versus 0 from Bladestorm. But I think getting the armor while he can is pretty good, because if Tom goes for a slower development turn, then Cheonsu can possibly take a turn of development instead of like Shield Maiden, Kargath, and still be very safe.
Indeed. Probably best top deck in his deck, though, to be fair to Tom. He does get one more immediate board development, which Cheonsu does kind of have to find an answer for. Obviously, he has it, as we can see, but from Tom's perspective, maybe he can squeak out some slim chance.
Tree. Okay, in terms of answers for Cheonsu, though, like, I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to brawl this because it's only 4 minions and he hasn't seen like the other Glowfly Swarm. You can brawl it because you can make the argument Tom only has 1 card in hand, but then you have to think, what if this card is Gust of Weight into more card draw off of something discovered from nature studies, for example. And so there's a world where you can even start Vol'jin, and if this card is Gibberling, which it's not likely to be, I think, then he can still like Shield Slam it at worst.
Yeah, a few ways to go about it.
I quite like Vol'jin, Coerce, and Shield Slam.
Okay, fair enough. That made sense to me. I mean, this does a similar job. Obviously, killing off a minion instead of bouncing it back to hand, sorry. It has limited difference, to be honest, in terms of the difference it makes. And I guess Vol'jin put more health in play.
I'm just a spend your mana gamer.
Not wrong. So now in terms of the cards actually left in Tom's deck, I suppose we should take a look at. No Fungal, Guess the Weight left. Double Nature Studies really is where I think if there's any hope, it lies there. If we're looking at Nature Studies into Resizing Pouch into Alexstrasza, can that ever get there? We've seen it once, or I don't know, Cenarian? Something stupid like that. Like, I'm trying to think of what big cards are actually left for Druid to discover.
I guess Cenarian Ward is one to think about on 8 mana, just from the usual Druid spell pool, not going through that additional logic gate of the resizing pouch. But sure, it definitely does have to come off Nature Studies now. The fact that Tom has Glowflied for 1 minion shows how desperate he is, but this Troublemaker is just gonna put the nail in the coffin. Even if Tom does get Studies into exactly Cenarian Ward, it's just not dealing with this shape of minion.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that Cheonsu can deduce from the fact that only 1 Glowfly was drawn that there is a Gibberling 100% in hand and could have Vol'jined, but even that is just worse than going for the Troublemaker anyway.
Okay, it's a lot of minions.
Eclipse.
He can
actually, I guess you'd go Rush first. And then Eclipse, just because you have mana spare and you don't want to lose board slots.
Right, yeah.
The hero power is quite good, though.
And he does have to take the rush, right? He has to kill the Troublemaker.
Yes, 100%.
And that means 3 of the 4 rushes go in alongside the Lunar Eclipse, and the hero power doesn't actually fit because of this line. Never mind. So he's not... Okay. I respect it.
Fair enough. He's lost this game anyway, right? Like, there is very, very little that can be done here, I guess. The Brawl, the Bladestorm, a little bit awkward here, if you want to frame it that way. Although Cheonsu could bounce back his Troublemaker, parachute it to safety, and then Brawl, if he wanted to go about it that way, and try and get the Rattlegore down was kind of interesting.
That's cute, but I really don't mind Cheonsu just like using more resources this way. It's just the safest possible play. He loses to literally nothing, even Nature Studies into Cenarian Ward this way.
Okay.
I guess Cenarian Ward can get him his own Troublemaker? I don't know. Yeah, there's nothing in his deck that gets there.
Yeah, Power of the Wilds, Thorn Growth, Innovate, Bloom. It's a load of garbage.
I can see.
somehow
throws it down.
Chef Nomi at the end there, it still loses to Brawl.
Yeah, that's true. Even that wouldn't have been enough. Neru Fireblade was like that out. If you can get that, I don't even know how you would get that in your hand, but I don't know. That was maybe the chance. Either way, it does mean, of course, that Cheonsu is winning Game 4, sending us all the way to Game 5, Gia. And it is the matchup that we were talking about a little while ago, the Control Warrior against the Demon Hunter. And for me, this is the real genius of the Japanese build of Control Warrior, as I will continue to call it. Because even though Cheonsu does have this build of Warrior this week, it was really created by Glory, Alusem, and Possessi last week, in addition to whoever they may have practiced with. And it just feels like it actually has a chance in an otherwise unwinnable matchup, because no matter how much armor you gain, that does not really matter against the OTK Demon Hunter. They can just deal 70, 100, whatever. If you're not putting them under any pressure, they will spend the entire game just reducing all their cards and dealing 1 million damage to you. But it's Shadowhunter Vol'jin, I think, that has a double-pronged attack that's so potent in the matchup. It can, of course, pull the Il'gynoth from your opponent's hand, but in all the practice testing that I've done, I haven't done that once. What I have done is pulled Troublemaker and, more importantly, Rattlegore from my hand, which is a nightmare for the Demon Hunter.
Yeah, I think more often you end up in that situation where you want to be aggressive as the Control Warrior to try and cheese this matchup. And in those small percentages of the time where you've kept track of the OTK Demon Hunter, what type of minions they've thrown out, and if you've deduced that your only out is to try and pull their Il'gynoth and destroy it immediately, then you can go for that with Vol'jin, even though it is a little bit more niche. For Tom, he is running this one Scorpion in there, which again I'm not a huge fan of because it just doesn't feel so fluid when the deck really wants to just be cycling as fast and efficiently as possible. I don't hate it in the matchup because it can give additional removal spells that sometimes will be relevant against the likes of Shield Maiden, etc. The difference maker in this matchup is not so much that the Warrior is actually able to get out of any huge breakpoints. There are certain breakpoints that they can get out of, but it's more due to Demon Hunter drawing poorly or awkwardly rather than the Warrior gaining so much armor. And so there's still chances to think about breakpoints from the Warrior side, but it's more often in the realm of 32, 36 instead of 24 that we were seeing from Rogue a while ago.
Yeah, agreed completely. Like, a lot does have to go right for the Warrior to win. The Demon Hunter does have to draw a bad hand, because if they draw Skull into Il'gynoth, you're dead. There's literally nothing you can do, unless you perfectly rip Il'gynoth out with the Vol'jin, which is very unlikely. But a lot of the time, as I was saying, you do try and go for these cheeses. There's very few minions in the deck, so if you do draw yourself Shadowhunter Vol'jin, you have a reasonable chance of pulling out one of the 3 top-end threats with Troublemaker or Rattlegore. But other than that, there are still ways that you can put a decent amount of pressure in. Like, if you go for Corsair Cash into Outrider's Axe, that is 12 damage. They're likely to heal it back up, but it can stack up pretty quickly. And even this Scorpid and Shield Maiden, those are decent cards, but they're not Vol'jin. And this hand that he's got himself now, if he can get it, is looking kind of spicy.
Indeed. Tom, I think we saw a full keep there. I was honestly looking at throwing maybe the right-hand Chaos Strike away, but it's still just ways to spend your mana that draw cards, which I don't hate in the long run. Skull is definitely the keep alongside the left-hand Chaos Strike because he is definitely going to easily play that and get the Skull in outcast position. So already, most of Tom's problems are solved in terms of being completely hand-locked and not having the Skull in the right position to actually get discounts.
Interesting. Corsair Cash into Bulwark of Azzinoth already. Like, that's a win condition that we didn't talk about in the matchup. Bulwark, of course, can win you the game against Demon Hunter because it just buys you a couple of extra turns where you're putting on your pressure in the late game and they can't kill you. But the Ooze in Tom's list very often just completely checks that alone.
That's right. Although, with the War Cash in the list, sorry, that's not being run here, is it? That was in Bank Yugi's list. There was a super niche situation where you can generate second Bulwark, and then the Demon Hunter would have to think, oh, I gotta save my Ooze, but that's not possible here. So as soon as Bulwark comes down, Tom is free to just Ooze that, and then the combo is delayed by only 1 turn at most.
Well, jumping into the nitty-gritty.
Well. Way to spend the mana and get that discount banked. It's just so strong.
Yeah, it's perfect. He gets to go for the skull this turn. Everything working out so well for him. He gets to go skull off the top. This for Cheonsu is the nightmare, as that tongue stuck out, I think perfectly demonstrates.
Cheonsu is just adorable, isn't he?
He really is. Okay, well, saving the coin does allow him coin troublemaker. He's not going for the route where you go for Vulgin and try to cheat it out, instead of having to pay the full mana cost. And I mean, I was going to say, as it currently stands, there isn't a way to cleanly deal with that. But even just Arcanist, Ethereal Orc Merchant plus Immolation Aura is 8 damage AoE, 7 damage AoE. That's going to be making quick work of the most of these.
Right. Honestly, for Tom, I'm interested in just dumping more cards to get the other spell played this turn. So something like Arcanist plus either Philosophy or Fellscream Blast into Skull is where my head is at. I kind of like the Philosophy because even if you draw crucial pieces off the Skull, you can then dump the Eye-Beam from the left-hand side. He does not need the Arcanist for the combo. But,
yeah, I guess the one fear is that maybe you're so far in the lead that with that line you would still go up to 10 cards, right? So if you can't play anything, maybe... Oh, no, wait, but even then you could... No, yeah, you're right, yeah. Yeah, I did like that a little bit better then.
Well, it does mean that Tom has to take another turn off Skull now, potentially, because he really wants to Immolation Aura this board. And that is not the end of the world.
Yeah, totally fine. Taking his turn to clear out as much hand space as possibly. But there is the follow-up again for Cheonsu.
Is that there is potentially a world where he needs the discount on the Ethereal Aug Merchant, but it's super niche if literally 0 other combo cards are discounted from this point. But again, I don't see it because he's banked the discount with the Raging Fellscreamer.
Poor Warlock.
Whoa,
Oh,
double 0 mana Mohawk is disgusting. And I mean, well, triple 0 mana Mohawk because of obviously the Philosophy as well. It's just about surviving. Tom has infinite damage now.
Right, so this turn is definitely going to play one of those Moargs with probably Talented Arcanist and Fellscream Blast, you'd have to imagine.
Right, yeah, okay, that sounds smart.
Even if it
Even
doesn't...
Frost as well.
Yeah, one of those to fully clear off the Troublemaker. My line would not have killed the Troublemaker, so this is probably just better.
Right, yeah, sorry, the Thalnos wouldn't have fit as well, so this is just the way to do it. Clear off the board, get the card draw rolling next turn with Spectral Sight. Just looking so good. Cheonsu, even if it goes for the Bulwark. Of course, there is the Swampus to then deal with that. Kargath into drawing Kargath Prime next card. Maybe. But it feels like you swing and play Rattlegore. That's the only win condition, I think, from here.
Right.
And, sorry, with the added addendum of you can always just win with Vulgin, potentially.
Being first into Moarg, I definitely like. Oh, okay. Guess he's leaving it up to potentially just Shield Slam or Minefield. I don't know. I felt like it was worth swinging into the Moarg because you're so desperate to get Rattlegore ASAP.
Exactly. That's the difference for me as well.
This does let him get Rancor and into the 32 range, but that is so far away, so far below what Tom can actually deal. We could see double Moargs for 0 mana, very possibly triple Moargs. He draws the other Philosophy or generates another Philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see.
Yeah, we're past a gazillion damage. This is a bajillion damage now.
With the Thalnos alone, I think it's 72 with 1 Fellscream Blast. Thalnos with
That'll
the 3
do.
Moargs, I mean. Oh wait, it might be 48. It's all right. Both of them win, and now there's 4 Moargs. So it's like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, even without any spell damage, it's still just, what, 48 with one Fell Screen Blast?
Right.
Like, it's absolutely absurd.
Okay.
Okay. So, he knows at least there are 3 Moargs in hand, right?
Yes.
At least.
I think Cheonsu thinks there's already Vol'jin in hand, so he's going for it. Sorry, not Vol'jin.
Okay.
Okay.
This is an interesting pan out I hadn't considered.
Right. He was thinking there was already Il'gynoth in hand, so he went for the Vol'jin. He, however, pulls the other important piece of Tom's game plan, which is to deny the Bulwark of Azeroth. And now, if it's Il'gynoth off the top, Tom immediately wins, but if it's not, then Cheonsu can Bulwark for a couple turns?
Oh, Skull though is so big.
Wait,
I mean,
it's Skull right now, right? If he discounts Il'gynoth and Fell Screen Blast, he wins right now because the Il'gynoth is
it's
1
just
mana.
lethal. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now Il'gynoth can't be played if it's drawn immediately. I don't know.
Would have overdrawn though, right? I guess you start with Moarg. Yeah, I think he would have overdrawn by 1, so he could have started Moarg. Because you don't need 4.
That's true. Yeah, with Thalnos, it's already 48. But now Cheonsu, for sure, will play the Bulwark.
100%. You have to play it here.
And then he can play Kargath for tempo because he starts just pressuring Tom now. That's the win condition. Tom has to take several turns to chip through 5 charges of the Bulwark. He can do it just through hero power alone or the Eldraki Warblades, but in the meantime, he'll be fatiguing, and Cheonsu is putting minions on board. Tom is upset.
Oh, Gia, this is going to be close.
He still has the studies as well that can sometimes generate stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, Tom hates to see it.
I mean, it was the one minion
will be
he couldn't afford
close.
to lose.
He's just dying. He has
You
no
think
way
he
to
still
heal.
wins?
No. I
think he just
Cheonsu
loses?
wins.
Oh my god.
How does he survive 4 more turns? Okay.
Dreadlord's Bite is huge. That's huge. That's just an instant extra charge gone.
Yes. 1 more turn on the clock here. But Tom is still taking a lot of damage. Okay. Can he throw away 1 Morg and Immolation Aura? Yes, is my answer to that, definitely. Because he has Thalnos and 3 Morgs.
It can even survive. But then the 3/5 still in play?
Yeah, it's a bit awkward, but it still removes damage, right? Tom can't take any more damage. He's fatiguing, and he can't use Hell Scream because it's his combo piece.
Oh, it's so close. It's so close. Like, that Shield Maiden is a huge top deck for Cheonsu, though. 5 extra damage a turn. It's not Rattlegore, and it's not Kargath Prime, but it's still a mammoth top deck. And there's some worlds where he actually gets out of the breakpoint from Tom right now, because the breakpoint is currently 48. Not counting the weapon yet, though. I think Tom might still get there. He can go swing face, equip Eldraki, and then Eldraki gets through 2 charges, right? Because it attacks and then deals the Il'gynoth damage.
Right,
and
that's a good catch.
then he just has lethal.
Yeah, that's a very good catch. So if Cheonsu can't get out of 48 this turn, then Tom just wins. And he is only at 41. So if Tom just goes for the Il'gynoth first and then swing face and then Thalnos, Triple Morg, and Fell Scream, that's just the game. If the Blades works the way we think it does.
Right. I mean, I've never seen this interaction before. I am not certain. But he's losing anyway, right? It's you either win this turn or you die.
Right. He has to try it. If he's not doing it immediately, I don't know if he's thinking about that, though. I've just never seen this pan out where it was the ooze pulled away.
I mean, maybe Il'gynoth does just do it at the same time. Tom clearly knows the interaction better than we do, and I'm just going to say we know that one incorrectly, and that was just the game for Cheonsu. But my goodness, what a pan out. And if I was Tom, I still would have tried, even if I was 100% certain that it doesn't interact in that way, as I'm sure he is. Man, what a way to go down. That is such a huge win for Cheonsu, and a devastating loss for Tom. He got himself the good matchup at the end and just throws it down. Again, I am praying that the interaction works the way Tom thinks it does. Otherwise, that would be an insane loss.
It truly would. We're going to get some confirmation on that, and if not, test it ourselves in the very near future. But for Cheonsu, that's enormous because he was just so unfavored to win from pretty much the very beginning when we saw the Skull outcast, the Skull top decked for outcast, followed by the other Skull. And then the Vol'jin was so clutch, not in the way that Cheonsu expected. I think he was playing it just for a Hail Mary to get the Il'gynoth when he knew there were like a gazillion Moargs that he could have missed on. And Tom knew that he didn't need to play any of those, so he was holding them in hand to play around Vol'jin for that amount of time. But unfortunately, it was the Ooze pulled out, and you get to see what we were talking about at the very beginning of the series, where Cheonsu, like, he has that win condition of Vol'jin pulling out Rattlegore, but sometimes there is win condition of pulling out a big combo piece or just the Ooze.
Yeah, I mean, I fully anticipate a storm of tweets in about 30 minutes' time, of course, once the delay catches up with the feed that we have live here, saying that it works one way or the other, arguing back and forth. Again, I hope it does work the way Tom thinks it does, or he is going to be kicking himself later, because that is potentially the game that relegates him there. He is right down at the bottom now, and that win was just kind of crucial, I think, for him to have any real chance of clawing his way out. Obviously, a win next week can get him out. He is not guaranteed relegated whatsoever, but it's a huge, huge deal in terms of the way things shake up down at the bottom.
Very tense stuff, Derek, and that series was such an intense way to end out the day. I can't believe it's only Friday. We have 2 more full days of Hearthstone action, and it does mean that we